On the day my daughter-in-law shoved a big black trash bag into my hands and kicked me out of the house, they figured I was done worthless, used up with nowhere to go. No phone, no cash, no place to turn. But 3 weeks later, they were the ones blowing up my phone 26 times a day. Not because they missed me, because they'd lost the only thing keeping their whole life afloat. On my 67th birthday, before I could even step into the kitchen for a cup of coffee, my daughter-in-law Brooke thrust that trash bag at me. No happy birthday, no cake, nothing. Just her cold stare and the front door standing wide open like an invitation to leave. My son Ryan stood there staring at his shoes, not saying a word, while Brooke delivered the line that flipped my whole world upside down. "Time for some fresh air around here, Martha. You're on your own, starting today." I thought it had to be some sick joke until I peeked inside the bag and saw my clothes crammed in there next to a pair of worn-out shoes. Then I heard the deadbolt click shut while I was still standing on the doorstep. That's when it hit me. This wasn't some heated argument that got out of hand. This was a cold, calculated plan they'd been sitting on for who knows how long. I asked for my phone, which was sitting right there on the hallway table. Brooke snatched it without a word, brushed past me, and hurled it onto the sidewalk. It smashed into 1,000 pieces. "Plans change," she snapped. Before I could even react, Ryan backed my car out of the driveway, rolled down the window, and called out, "The title's in my name anyway, Mom." Then he hit the gas and drove off to sell it that same morning. There I was on my own birthday, tossed out like yesterday's garbage. Brooke leaned out the upstairs window, the one that used to be my bedroom, and laughed. Finally, room for my new home office. What I felt wasn't hot anger. It was this icy, crystal clear understanding. They'd already changed the locks, cleaned out my savings account, and left me standing on the street in suburban Chicago with nothing. I didn't spend that first night crying. That would have felt too dramatic, like something from a movie. I just sat at a bus stop and ran the numbers in my head, about $40 in my pocket, no phone, no insurance, no keys, and 2 changes of clothes. Luckily, my ID was still in my jacket pocket, an old habit that kept me from disappearing completely. But here's what they forgot. For years, I was the one who handled every single dollar that came through this family. 3 weeks later, they were calling me 26 times a day. By then, I'd already made my first move. That first night at the central bus station taught me that fear turns real practical when you've got nowhere safe to sleep. I washed my face in the public restroom sink and stayed awake because nodding off in a place like that is just asking for trouble. At sunrise, I went through the trash bag more carefully and realized Brooke hadn't even bothered to pack my stuff right. Half the clothes belonged to her, or Ryan old sweaters they probably wanted to get rid of anyway. They hadn't just thrown me out. They'd used me as their personal dumpster. Around noon, I walked a few blocks to a laundromat and borrowed a phone from a kind lady to call the only number I still remembered by heart, the little bed and breakfast on the edge of town where I used to help with the books. I asked the owner, Mr. Harlan, if he needed any help with admin work or housekeeping. He remembered me because I was always the one who caught every little discrepancy in the receipts. He said he had a small room up in the attic if I was willing to cover the night shift at the front desk. I said yes before he even finished the sentence. That afternoon, I camped out at the public library, not just for the warmth, but for the computers. There it was in my email confirmation that Ryan had emptied my private savings account, the one he had power of attorney for, right at 9 a.m. on my birthday. It felt like someone had surgically removed every trace of the life I'd built. Ryan sold the car. Brooke tossed my personal papers, and they both figured I was now just a harmless old lady with zero resources. But while scrolling through my emails, I spotted something their greed had made them miss: the annual statement for the rental income from that little storefront downtown my late husband had left me. The money had been flowing into our joint family account, the one Ryan now controlled. But the lease was in my name only. I leaned back in the library chair and felt my heartbeat steady. I knew exactly what I had to do next. I settled into that tiny attic room at Mr. Harlan's place. It smelled like lemon polish and the old TV flickered, but the door had a solid deadbolt on the inside. That was all I needed. First thing the next morning, I didn't go see Ryan. I went straight to the bank, then to the tenant in my storefront, a longtime bookseller. I kept it short and clear. My banking details had changed. From now on, the rent would go to a brand new private account he couldn't touch. The bookseller nodded respectfully. People around here appreciate straight talk. After that, I stopped by the utility company's customer center. The house where Ryan and Brooke were living was still legally mine, an inheritance from my husband that I'd let them use. All the bills for electricity, gas, and water were in my name. I could have cut the power off cold, but that would have been petty and just given Ryan an excuse to play victim. Instead, I switched the payments to pay by mail, with invoices sent directly to the house. No more automatic withdrawals from my account. If they didn't pay themselves, things would go dark, and the late notices would land right on their doorstep addressed to me, but with none of my money backing them up. Over the next few days, I watched on social media as Brooke posted pictures of her fancy new office. She'd hauled my old furniture to the curb and replaced it with expensive designer pieces. They had no idea the ground was already cracking under their feet. I worked my night shifts, saved every penny, and bought myself a simple new phone. I turned it on and immediately blocked Ryan's and Brooke's numbers. I didn't want to hear their excuses. I wanted them to feel the silence. By the end of the first week, an old neighbor messaged me. "Martha, the downstairs lights aren't on anymore, and Ryan looks really stressed. Everything okay?" I just replied, "I'm enjoying retirement." The real storm was only starting, though right when their first big luxury bill bounced. After 2 weeks at the bed and breakfast, my routine had settled in. I was tired, but my head felt clearer than it had in years. One evening, while I was checking the guest list, an email popped up from the Homeowners Association for the property. It was about a special assessment for roof repairs on the house, several $1,000s due. As the owner, it was my responsibility, but Ryan had always insisted on handling the mail, so I wouldn't worry my pretty little head. Turns out, he'd probably been intercepting the letters to keep up appearances while spending my savings on Brooke's wishes. Now that I'd cut off access to the drained account and redirected the rent, he was out of cash flow. I replied to the association matter-of-factly that I'd pay in installments, but I wanted a full detailed history of past payments. That's when it came out. Ryan hadn't been contributing to the maintenance reserves for months. He'd even used the house as collateral for a personal loan, a loan he only got because he'd forged my signature. I sat in the little kitchenette at the B&B sipping black tea while I studied the documents. No rage, just facts. Ryan hadn't just stood by, he'd crossed into straight-up illegal territory to keep Brooke happy. He probably figured I'd never notice or that I'd never turn him in. He was right about the second part. I didn't want police drama in my own family, but I wasn't about to lose the house over his mistakes either. I sent a short, formal note to the lender stating I had no knowledge of any guarantee on the property and that I forbade any further liens against it. The reaction came fast. That same evening, the calls started. My new phone wouldn't stop buzzing on the front desk. Ryan, Brooke, even Brooke's mom, they all tried reaching me. I watched the screen light up 5 calls, 12:20. I slipped the phone into the drawer and went back to balancing the guest accounts. When you lose control of the money in this world, you lose your cool pretty damn quick. The next morning, my inbox was flooded with desperate messages. Ryan wrote, "Mom, please pick up. There's a mix-up with the bank. We can't make the payments." Brooke started with threats. "If you ruin our credit, we'll report you for neglect." I almost smiled at that one. Neglect. They'd handed me a trash bag and changed the locks on my birthday. I didn't reply to any of it. Instead, I took the bus over to the house. I didn't want to go inside, I just wanted to see it from the outside. The garden I'd tended for over 30 years already looked neglected. The rose bushes were drying up, and yellow trash bags were piling up by the door. Brooke was great at claiming space, but terrible at keeping it. While I stood there, Ryan came out. He looked pale hair, unwashed. When he spotted me, he practically ran over. "Mom, where have you been? We've been so worried." He tried to hug me, but I stepped back and folded my arms. "You were worried about my savings account, Ryan." "Not about me," I said quietly. He stammered something about a temporary cash crunch and how Brooke had a plan to fix everything. I cut him off. "Your plan included throwing me out on my birthday. My plan now includes selling the house." Ryan froze. That house was his whole status symbol with his friends. "You can't do that." "Where are we supposed to go?" I looked him straight in the eye. "Where grown-ups go when it's time, a place you pay for yourselves." That's when Brooke stormed out, face red with fury. "You bitter old witch! You're destroying our lives. We have rights." I pulled the document from my bag, the formal termination of their occupancy agreement, which I'd sent by certified mail that morning. "Save the speech, Brooke. You haven't paid rent, you've damaged the property. And you tried to borrow against something that isn't yours. You've got 3 weeks to pack your things into trash bags. This time, they'll be your own." I turned and walked away, letting her screams fade behind me. The days that followed were nonstop phone harassment, 26 calls one single morning. Ryan switched to the pity card, leaving voicemails where he cried and claimed Brooke had pressured him, that he was just a victim of her ambitions. I listened while I was cleaning windows at the B&B. It was sad to realize my son had no backbone, but it didn't change the facts. If you stand by while your mother gets thrown out with a trash bag, you're not a victim, you're an accomplice. I met with a real estate agent at a little cafe. He was impressed with the house's location and condition, at least how I'd left it. He said a sale could happen in just a few weeks because the neighborhood was hot. "Mrs. Harlan," he told me, "you could buy yourself a nice little condo near the lake and still have plenty left for a comfortable life." The thought of waking up to water views and no more stairs felt for the first time like a real future. Back at the house, or whatever Ryan still called it, things were falling apart. Since they'd ignored the utility bills I'd switched to pay by mail, the power company showed up. Ryan called me from a neighbor's phone this time. "Mom, they shut off the electricity. Brooke's losing it. She can't work. Please pay the bill. We'll pay you back." I answered calmly. "I don't have money in that savings account anymore. Remember? You cleaned it out on my birthday morning. Use that cash for the lights." He hung up without another word. Brooke tried one last desperate play. She posted an old photo of me sitting at the bus stop on Facebook, claiming I was confused and had wandered off and that they were desperately searching. She was hoping for public pressure, but she hadn't counted on my old bookkeeping friends. They commented right under it. "Martha's doing great working at the B&B. She's never looked better since she moved out. Maybe you two should try paying your own bills." The post was deleted within an hour. Truth is a sharp weapon online when you use it quietly. 3 weeks had passed since Brooke handed me that trash bag. The deadline to vacate the house was closing in. In the meantime, I'd had all the powers of attorney Ryan ever held formally revoked at a notary. It was straightforward since everything was still in my name, or I was the primary owner. Without my signature, Ryan was just another guy with bad credit begging at the bank. The calls slowed but got more frantic. Ryan started sending photos of moving boxes, hoping I'd soften. I visited the house one last time before the official handover to the agent. Brooke was sitting on the front steps, surrounded by designer bags and fancy furniture that now looked completely out of place. "You win," she spat as I walked up the sidewalk. "We're moving out, but don't expect Ryan to ever speak to you again. You sold out your own family for money." I stopped and looked at her steadily. I didn't sell my family, Brooke. I dropped a burden. Real family protects each other. You two hunted me. Ryan came out carrying a box with the last of my books, the ones they'd planned to toss. For a split second, I saw the little boy who used to be scared of thunderstorms. But there was no comfort from me this time. I took the box and put it in the trunk of the cab I'd called. "The house is being shown next week," I told him. "The agent's commission comes out of the proceeds along with the debts you put on the property. Whatever's left is mine." Ryan swallowed hard. "And us. Where are we supposed to go?" I gave him the address of an affordable 2-bedroom rental in a working-class neighborhood owned by someone I knew. "It's clean and the rent is reasonable if you both work." I told the landlord, "You're reliable. Don't make me regret it again." It wasn't reconciliation. It was the last scrap of motherly care stripped down to the bare minimum. Brooke let out a hysterical laugh, but Ryan took the note without a word. He knew it was the only lifeline I was throwing him. The house sold smoothly. A young couple who wanted to save the old rose bushes bought it at full asking price. When I signed the papers at the closing, I didn't feel pain, just an enormous wave of relief. That heavy inheritance tying me to the past, and my son's ingratitude had finally turned into cash I could control. I paid off the debts Ryan had racked up and still had more than enough to rebuild. Ryan and Brooke had moved into the small apartment. I heard Brooke was now working at a call center because her little business collapsed without my financial cushion. I didn't buy another house. I chose a nice long-term rental in an upscale senior community right by Lincoln Park. I had a small patio housekeeping service, and most important, a door that only I had the key to. My new life was quiet, but full. I took morning walks, read the paper without rushing, and started seeing friends again. The old ones who'd pulled back during the Brooke years came back around. They'd sensed the tension, but didn't want to get mixed up in family business. Ryan called me after 2 months. This time his voice was different. No begging, no anger, just exhaustion. "Mom, can we meet for coffee? Just us." I hesitated. My gut said, keep the door closed, but I wanted to see if he'd learned anything. We met at a little cafe far from our old neighborhood. He looked older, clothes simple, and for the first time, he seemed like a man carrying the weight of his own choices. He told me Brooke had left him once the money dried up. She'd gone back to her mom and left him stuck with the payments on all her fancy furniture. I stirred my coffee and listened, and felt almost nothing. There was pity, but no urge to rescue him again. He didn't ask for money. He just asked, "How did you stay so calm when we threw you out?" I looked at him and said, "Because I knew who I was, Ryan, and I knew who you two were. That was my advantage all along." That coffee with Ryan wasn't some heartfelt reunion. It was closure. He finally understood I wasn't the convenient mom anymore, the one who quietly fixed everything and paid the bills in the background. Now he had to navigate the system himself. Unemployment paperwork, creditor calls, showing up for work every day. I didn't offer financial help, but I gave him one piece of advice. Focus on the job. Ryan, in this country, honest work is the only real path back to self-respect. He nodded and left. He had no key to my new place, and he didn't ask for one. At the senior community, I volunteered running the little library. It brought me real joy. One afternoon, Brooke showed up. She looked washed out, her old arrogance gone. She tried to pull me into conversation, talking about misunderstandings and how she'd been under so much stress back then. She was clearly hoping I still had a soft spot and would hand over some of the house money to cover her debts. She even called me mom again. I set down the book I was shelving and looked her straight in the eye. Brooke, we're not family anymore. The day you smashed my phone and changed the locks was the day you cut every tie to me. She started crying, but these were loser's tears, not the tears of someone truly sorry. You've got so much money now, Martha. A few thousand wouldn't even dent it for you. I answered, It's never been about the money, Brooke. It's about respect. And respect isn't something you can buy back. Please leave now or I'll have to call security. She stormed off cursing and I went back to my books. It amazed me how little her words stung anymore. Once you've hit rock bottom of disappointment, there's nowhere left to fall. I'd drawn my hard line and I wasn't letting anyone cross it again. That evening, I sat on my patio looking out at the trees, enjoying the quiet. My phone stayed silent. No more 26 calls, no demands, no lies. Just me and my own choices. Today, almost a year later, I often sit in the park and watch the families. I see young moms with strollers and older women looking after their grandkids. Sometimes I wonder how many of them are trapped in the same invisible cage I was in, overlooked, used, valued only for what they could provide. My advice to them would always be the same. Don't wait for the trash bag. Set your boundaries while you still hold the keys. Control isn't a lack of love. It's how you protect your own dignity. Ryan texts me short messages now and then. He's got steady work at a logistics center and seems stable. We meet every couple of months for an hour. It's distant, almost formal, but it's honest. He knows he'll never fully earn back my trust, but he respects my independence. He's learned that blood alone doesn't give anyone a free pass to betray you. And I've learned that even at 67, you can start completely over if you're willing to let go of the dead weight from the past. People often ask if I've forgiven them. I always say forgiveness is a big word. I've chosen not to stay angry. But forgetting is something else entirely. I still remember the sound of that deadbolt clicking and my phone shattering on the pavement. Those memories are my guardians now. They make sure I never again let someone else decide my place in the world. My life belongs to me, and every dollar I have is a brick in my freedom. When people come crawling back only because they need my name on a document or because their house of cards has collapsed, I stay polite but firm. Real amends show up in everyday actions, not desperate phone calls. I'm living the life I always wanted now, clear, steady, and on my own terms. The door behind me is closed, and this time I'm the only one with the key. It feels good to finally be home right here with myself. My phone stays quiet these days. No more 26 calls, no demands. Just peace and a door that only I can open.